This is Ron Gutardi speaking. I'm Assistant Director of the Oral History Program on the Battleship New Jersey. Today is July 22nd, 2014, and we're here aboard the Battleship New Jersey to interview James M. Graham, Jr., who was a crew member aboard the Battleship New Jersey from June 1982 to June 1984. Welcome aboard, James. What do you go by? Jim?
Jimmy.
Jimmy?
Yes, sir.
Glad to have you here, Jimmy. I assume you've been here before on the battleship?
Yes, sir. Approximately 3 years ago, my son Nicholas Graham enlisted in the U.S. Navy, and I believe it was November the 22nd, 2011. I brought Nick up here to the ship the day before he left for boot camp. And he got to take a tour aboard the ship and see where I spent 2 years of my life, and it was very exciting for me to have that experience with my son.
And where is he now?
My son's currently on leave. He just finished up a tour in Shinhae, Korea. He's a Master at Arms with the U.S. Naval Security Forces. He spent a little over 2 years there and then reported to San Antonio, Texas at Lackland Air Force Base. And he is now a military dog handler. He graduated from school approximately 4 weeks ago. He's home on a short leave period, and his next duty station is Bahrain. He'll be stationed there for 1 year. He leaves this Saturday.
Okay. All right, let's get back to you now.
Yes, sir.
When did you join the Navy?
I joined the Navy in September of 1978. I reported to Great Lakes, Illinois. That's where I attended boot camp.
Why did you join the Navy?
Well, actually, because I had gotten myself in some trouble with driver's license points accumulating, and it was all driving related. And when I went to court one day, the judge said, "Young man, I think the best thing for you to do is really think about joining the military." And I picked the Navy.
And was he right? Was it a good thing for you?
I haven't had a ticket. I'm 57 years old now, and now we're going back to 1978. I can't figure out the amount of years right now, but I've never had a ticket ever since.
That's great. How old were you at the time you enlisted?
21, sir.
21.
Yes.
Okay. So you went through boot camp, and then where to?
Well, my rate, I got to pick the particular rate that I wanted to be with the recruiter, and I picked operations specialist. So at the time, upon completing boot camp at Great Lakes, my school was also there, so I just continued on with the stay at Great Lakes for approximately another 3-4 months.
Jimmy, why did you pick operations specialist? Did you know a lot about it at that time?
Actually, I scored quite high on the ASVAB test, and I was offered several rates like the nuclear field and whatnot, submarines and stuff like that, based upon my scores. And at the time, operations specialist was up in that category, with the weapon systems and whatnot, anti-submarine warfare, air traffic control.
It was one of the more desirable ratings, I would gather.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So after completing A school, my first ship was the USS Bolster, ARS-38, and it was stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. I spent a little over 4 years there in Pearl Harbor, made 2 Westpac cruises on that particular ship. When we finally, this was coming to the end of my first enlistment.
Westpac means Western Pacific for those.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, for our audience. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. And it was coming close to the time where I was to re-enlist, and that's when we received a message concerning volunteering to serve aboard the Battleship New Jersey. So I filled out my application, and it took a while. I can't remember how long the process took, but the ship received a message one day saying that I had been selected to be a part of the crew, pre-commissioning crew. So I don't really remember whether
This was about 1980?
This was 1982.
82, okay.
Yes. And part of the agreement of me being selected, I guess, another re-enlistment was involved, I believe. So I loved the Navy at that point, and I surely wanted to go to the battleship. So re-enlisting for me was not a problem. And what I did was, to make it even more special, I re-enlisted on board the USS Arizona Memorial. That particular day, the flag that was flying on staff at the memorial, they lowered. They raised a flag for me. I completed the ceremony, and
Which flag did they raise?
the American flag.
American flag, okay.
Yes, and at the completion of the ceremony, they lowered my flag, folded it, presented it to me, and then rehoisted the original American flag that was there before my arrival. And to this day, I still have my flag, and as a matter of fact, it was more of a special moment because I had flown my mother over to Hawaii, and she had attended my ceremony. So it's a memory I always have.
That's wonderful. All right, now were you aboard for the recommissioning ceremony itself?
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay.
sir. I left Pearl Harbor and reported to Long Beach for duty. And at the particular time, the ship was in dry dock, and we slept on barges for months and months and months until finally the ship was pierside, and we were able to actually go on board and pick our berthing compartments out and move on board the ship. So during that period of time when we slept on barges, we were going to schools, quite a few schools, to learn the different weapon systems on board the New Jersey and whatnot. That was an interesting part of the time also. We traveled back and forth to Point Mugu, to San Diego, and yeah, I did not like living aboard those barges because they were quite uncomfortable. Navy racks are uncomfortable to begin with, but the barges didn't have any air conditioning, and it was
That must have been fun.
not too good sometimes.
So the New Jersey was more comfortable living aboard?
Yes, sir. Well, oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Getting off those barges was very exciting. Everybody was happy.
Do you remember the commissioning ceremony itself?
Yes, I do, sir.
Can you tell us anything about that?
We rehearsed for, I'd say, possibly, I'm going to say 1 to 2 weeks, possibly. You know, the formations that we were going to stand in, uniform inspections, and whatnot.
What was your rating at the time?
I was an OS2, a second class operations specialist. And then, you know, you could see Secret Service agents on the pier and positioning their men in anticipation of President Reagan arriving. So that morning, we all left the ship and stood out in formation and waited for President Reagan's arrival. The ceremony was quite long. And I can remember standing out there. We were at attention for some time, but finally we were able to go to parade dress.
What time of year was that?
Oh, I can't recall.
Was it summertime or spring, or do you remember?
It was, it had...
Attention on the New Jersey. We have a green backpack belonging to Scott Leiter. That is Scott Leiter. You may pick up your bag at the quarter deck.
I'm sure you can edit the tape correctly.
Thank you.
I believe it was early spring.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's the best of my recollection. So it was very special to me at the time to see the president arrive. I mean, it was a very special moment. President Reagan treated the Navy very well. For quite some time, the money that we were making was not good. I believe in 1982, President Reagan gave the military a tremendous raise. I think an amount of like 14%. And it was huge, huge. So seeing him was fabulous. I mean, I had seen him in movies and whatnot, and to experience the man being right there was pretty special.
Okay, then when you went to sea, where did you go?
Okay, well, of course, after the commissioning stuff, we were offshore quite a bit testing our weapon systems and whatnot. And finally, I guess it was in May of 1983 is when we left for a Westpac cruise. I believe we went to, first stop was Hawaii, and then proceeded west. I can't remember all the different countries that we had went to, but I do know we had eventually stopped at Pattaya Beach, Thailand for a Liberty call. And a lot of us were off the ship on Liberty. And at that time we had shore patrol, guys that would come around and keep us in line while we're on the beach. So it was in the afternoon, I believe, and the shore patrol had come around and they were walking in the different bars and stuff and telling us that you guys are on emergency recall, you need to go back to the ship right now. And a lot of us had been drinking and were hanging out with girls and whatnot, having a good time, and we didn't believe it. So we just sat there and continued to drink and have a good time, and a little while later they came in the bar again, and this time they were a little bit more forceful and said, look, this is no joke. You guys need to get back to the ship now.
This is not a drill, right?
Correct. So we got back to the ship, on board the ship, and I don't really recall what the message said, but we were immediately detached to return to Pearl Harbor. We didn't know why at the time, but they said to steam back to Pearl Harbor, you know, as fast as possible. So along the way, we found out that we were then going to be sent to Nicaragua, down in the South American countries, because of all the illegal arms shipments that were going on at the time. So we left Pearl, went down that way, and then we received another message that leave that area, proceed through the Panama Canal, and then proceed to Beirut, Lebanon, for duty. So we went to the Panama Canal. That was an absolutely wonderful experience. There was a cruise ship at the time going in the opposite direction. We were going into the Atlantic, and they were coming out to go into the Pacific. And I can remember, and basically at one point going through the locks, the ships were somewhat at the same level. And there was people out there on the ship waving to us, and guys were throwing their Dixie cups, you know, the white hats to the people, you know, passengers on the cruise ship. And the captain caught tailwind of that and saw that, he knocked that off real quick. He came over to one of them and said, keep your covers on, do not throw any more covers over that ship, you know. So then we got through the Med and stopped in France, Italy, and went on station in Beirut, and then arrived there in September of 1983.
And what was happening in Beirut at the time? Do you remember?
At the time, we had quite a few Marines stationed there, and between the religious fractions, there was a lot of combat occurring. I can remember when we first showed up on station off the coast, we had received fire at the ship from land artillery batteries, but they didn't have the range to hit the ship. You know, you could see the splashes and explosions in the water, but we just moved on out a little bit. And then
Did you return fire at all?
not at that time, sir. No. Then we just remained on station for quite some time. There were some carriers in the area, and they were doing some land strikes and whatnot. And then I guess it was October 23rd. Well, let me back up a second. It was the evening of the 22nd. I was on watch up in CEC, Combat Engagement Center. I was a Tomahawk OIDT operator. I worked with the Tomahawk cruise missile systems. I was actually the planner of the route that the missile would actually fly to its target. So I guess it was about 2300, which is 11 p.m. We had a request from shore from one of the Marine units saying that they needed a fire control radar technician to repair one of their tanks. And Master Chief Gorczynski was in Combat Engagement Center at the time and volunteered to go ashore. So I guess we went to flight quarters about midnight or shortly thereafter. Master Chief went ashore, and about that time I was due to get off watch. I went to bed, and I guess it was about 6:30 the following morning. The general quarters alarm sounded. I jumped out of my rack and got up to CEC as soon as possible. And that's when we were informed that the barracks had been attacked. We didn't know the condition of Master Chief Gorczynski, where he was, or anything. And that's when things really started going downhill. We brought about a lot of the wounded were flown out to the ship because we had doctors aboard the ship, and they tried to take care of most guys that they could. After things settled down, maybe 2 weeks later after the bombing, we finally had gotten word that Master Chief Gorczynski was in the barracks at the time of the bombing and had died. His body was eventually identified in Germany, I believe, through dental records. And we would take a lot of the Marines that weren't wounded, that were in good shape. Were coming out to the ship on a rotating basis to eat with us, to get showers and whatnot, and try to just stress down a little bit, and then they would go back to shore, and some more Marines would come back out.
Was there any rotation between the Mardet on the ship and the shore?
No, I believe our Mardets stayed aboard, but we were just trying to help as much as possible, Then there was one particular night, after that, that's when things, like I said, started to heat up, and we had gotten a lot of naval gunfire support missions requested by the Marines, and we were doing a lot of 5-inch 38 missions, whatnot. And then one night we had gotten a message, intelligence message, that a terrorist attack was going to be planned against the New Jersey. That a commercial airliner had been loaded with explosives and had taken off someplace in Europe, and its mission was to locate the New Jersey and basically do a kamikaze attack on our ship. For a while there, we were getting intel information that the plane was here, and they were monitoring its progress, and at that time we went into it was at night when this was occurring. We turned all shipboard lights out above decks. We went into a zigzag pattern for hours and hours and hours, and finally we got word that the terrorist threat was no longer valid. But I got to tell you, I was scared, literally scared to death. And this was the real deal. Because at one time Captain Milligan told us, mandatory, everyone will don their dog tags. Every sailor on this board this ship will have their dog tags on. So that happened. And then February is when we really got a big time fire mission. I think one particular day we fired 283 rounds out of 60-inch guns, and it was exciting for the crew.
Was that the first time you'd experienced the 16-inch guns?
Yes, it was,
fired?
and I was amazed. The power, the intimidation or of these big guns was tremendous.
Do you know what the target was at that time?
So it had to be Syrian anti-aircraft batteries, you know, surface-to-air missile targets of some type in Syria.
How about the cruise missiles? Did you use them at all?
No, unfortunately, we didn't get the opportunity. I went to school for such a long time, and sitting at that console for hours and hours and days at a time, you know, it may sound kind of weird, but you kind of wish for the day that you can really do the real thing, you know. But
You were trained for it. It's
yes, sir.
natural.
That didn't occur. But we had been at sea for a long time, and when we finally got that big fire mission, the morale of the crew was uplifted tremendously. Everybody was happy. We finally got to do our job.
So for how many days did you fire the 16-inch gun?
I think it went on for it was just one day, actually.
I think
Just one day.
Just one day?
February.
Yes, sir. Trying to think what happened after that. Well, I have to back up a little bit. I got ahead of myself. We had been at sea so long. I believe the longest period of time we spent at sea, consecutive days-wise, without having a port visit, was 125. And it was around Christmas time. Bob Hope had flown out to the ship and did a show that was special for us. And then I don't know who came up with the idea, but a program was set up where a lottery was held on board the ship for X amount of sailors to have the opportunity to leave the ship and fly home to visit their families and then return. And when they did, another group would fly out to go home and visit their families. I didn't get picked, so I was on board the ship the whole trip. And finally, we got word. We'll back up a little bit. You know, they told us we were going to leave station and return home several times. We would get our hopes up, and hey, we're finally going home. Then a day later, no, you're not. You've been delayed. Remain on station. And I've learned over the years that at the time, the reason was for the delay was the Iowa was not ready to relieve the ship. And finally, I guess it was May or June of '83 when we got relieved and returned home.
So what happened then?
Well, when I arrived back at Long Beach, it was a super homecoming. I mean, the pier was just covered with thousands of people waiting for us to come back. They had tugboats out there in front of the ship with their fire hoses shooting, you know, like fountains of water, and you know, all kinds of banners flying and helicopters flying around taking pictures. And that was pretty darn exciting. Yes. And on the way in before pierside, we had a memorial service for Master Chief Korchinski, and a wreath was thrown off the bow into the water for him, and that was a special moment. And then after returning back, at that time I had spent almost 6 years at sea, and I was due for my shore duty tour. I went to Virginia Beach, Virginia, at Dam Neck Naval Station, and instructed school at the Tomahawk Cruise Missile School for 2 years.
You were an instructor?
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I taught the officers that were eventually going to go out to the platforms that had the Tomahawk cruise missiles on board.
Were you still second class at this
No,
time?
sir. I had made first class aboard the New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
So, I guess now, yeah, that took me up to 1986. was due to re-enlist again, and was about ready to sign the papers. And my family members were ill. My mom and dad had asked me to return home, not to re-enlist, that they have medical problems and that they needed me. So I got out of the Navy. However, I went into the Naval Reserve, spent the 2 following years in the reserves, and actually made chief. And in that 2-year period, I became a Baltimore police officer. And after 2 years of the reserves, it seemed like the reserves was interfering with my police work and whatnot. And I ultimately retired from the police department in Baltimore. So everything turned out pretty well. I missed the Navy tremendously, but everything happens for a reason, and my life has turned out quite well.
Good. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like living aboard the New Jersey? For example, where did you bunk?
I bunked on the second deck, below the main deck, up forward on the starboard side. Being a more senior enlisted, I had a better berthing compartment than the seamen and OS3s and E2s and whatnot. So I didn't find it to be too bad, because I'd already come from a one ship and it was nothing new to me. So I had no problem whatsoever with sleeping on board the ship. The food was great. I didn't really have any complaints, except for the fact that, like, for 7 months when we were on duty station at Beirut, we were working port and starboard watches. And that means, 7 on, you're up in combat, 7 off, you go to bed. You get back up, 7 hours on, go back to bed 7 hours. And this went on literally for 7 months continuously. And that was tremendously hard. I mean, all you did was eat, sleep, and work. And sometimes you just get meals because you wanted to get some sleep. I think when I returned home, I weighed about 125 pounds.
How much had you lost?
I'd say I probably lost at least 30 some pounds.
During that 7-month tour?
Well, the 13th month, 11, 12, however we were going, yeah. My brother had flown out to Long Beach for our arrival, and when he saw me, he said, "That's not you," because I was so skinny. But everything worked out okay.
You put it back on, huh?
Yes, sir, a little bit. Yes, sometimes too much, but everything's okay now. I'm so proud to have been a crew member. It's she's right here in my heart every day.
That's great.
And today, prior to this interview, this is very special. 2 years ago, one of my shipmates, Kevin Montagna, had tracked a few of the shipmates down and coordinated a reunion for us. We had a reunion in Las Vegas 2 years ago.
This is just the special operations guys?
Yes, sir, our division.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so special. We stayed at Caesar's Palace. We hadn't seen each other in almost 30 years, and it was so special. And we agreed to have the reunion every 2 years. So this year we came to the East Coast. We're staying in Atlantic City so we could come aboard the ship. And we're having such a good time.
Where do you live, Jimmy?
I live in Parkville, Maryland. It's just about 13 miles north of Baltimore.
Now, did all of you guys serve at the same time on the ship?
No, sir. There's only maybe a handful of guys here that were here for the pre-commissioning crew through the end of the cruise. But there's different fellows here that came on at different times.
But all of them in the 1980s?
Correct, sir. That is
Okay.
correct. Yes.
Were any of them here at the time the ship was decommissioned? Some were?
I was not.
Okay. You were off by then.
Yes, sir.
So tell us about some other things that...
Oh, I'm sorry. Rick, you can edit this out. I know you can.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
Any tattoos you want to show?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Tattoos. You got some tattoos?
Yes, sir, I do have one very special. I don't know if the camera will pick it up good, but
Hold on a sec here. I have to tip the camera a little bit. Okay. Bear with me a second here while I get this camera focused on that. Come in a little bit. Oh, New Jersey, BB 62, Firepower for Freedom. Wow.
yes, sir. When I found out about the reunion that was going to take place in Caesars 2 years ago in Las Vegas, I had gotten tattoos prior to this one, and I had the ship's patch with me one particular day, and I said, you know, I'm going to do something special for this reunion. And I took that patch to my tattoo artist, and here I am with it today.
And that was just 2 years ago?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any other tattoos?
Yes,
Oh,
sir. I
you do.
got some pinup girls on my legs. And I got
He's a real
some,
Navy man.
some other my other ship's patch on the back of my shoulder, and I got a Navy anchor over here with USN on it and whatnot. So, you can't be a sailor if you don't have a tattoo. You have to have tattoos, drink black coffee, and have lots of girlfriends to be a true sailor.
Do you have lots of girlfriends?
No, sir, I have one, special one, my wife.
Oh, okay.
But I've had many in the past. A girl in every port. You know, you've heard that saying,
Oh, yeah.
and that's a true statement.
Okay. Can you tell us what the Navy did for you, or what impact it had on your life?
It really straightened me out, because the path that I was going on was not the correct one. When I came to the fork in the road, and instead of going to the right, I definitely made a hard left. And being in the Navy just brought me back on the center line, and now I went down the right path.
Okay, that's great. A great story, Jimmy. We appreciate your service, and we appreciate you taking some time to talk with us
Yes,
today.
sir. I enjoyed it.
And
Thank you.
we're